Welcome to Built from Love, the podcast for moms birthing businesses and babies. I'm Erin Pratt, and thank you so much for being here. Welcome back to the Built from Love podcast. My name is Erin Pratt, and I am so excited to be here to talk all about creativity in motherhood today. Women are all creative. We're all creators. We are just essentially creative in our nature. And I remember when I first became a mom, that my creativity started to slowly take different shape. And it was one of the more shocking parts of becoming a first-time mom. Before being a mom, I had more control over my time. If I was getting into a creative flow or starting a project or blogging, putting together a yoga sequence, whatever I was in the midst of, for the most part, I could work uninterrupted. After becoming a mom and having a baby who had unpredictable nap times, nap schedules, wake windows, needed to eat, it was quite a shock. I would find a pocket of time and start settling in, making my tea, getting so comfy on the couch with my computer, sitting down to blog. And all of a sudden, my baby woke up. And there goes my creative time. And it was really hard to mentally task switch. It was so hard in the beginning. I wasn't quite used to that. Where I had these prior to becoming a mom, I would have chunks of time. I could create a schedule. I could have a routine that was predictable and stick with it as I felt the need to stick with it or change it up as I felt the need to change it up. And it was such a shock to my system and to my inner creative flow and soul and the way that I worked to have a baby there. The shock started to become a little bit more normalized. And then I had my second baby. And I thought I was getting things down pat. And then all of a sudden, I was thrown into this new unknown of being needed by two little ones in different ways simultaneously. And there chipped off another part of my creativity. It was like it just kind of kept getting buried under the weight of responsibility and the demands of motherhood in the early child raising years. Enter baby number 3, and here we go. You would think that now it's like completely gone, right? Well, things have shifted a little bit, and I've realized a few things about creativity and motherhood. And the most important thing I've found is motherhood doesn't end creativity, but it does change what it looks like. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And if you are in the midst of early motherhood and starting to feel like you lose pieces of yourself, starting to feel like you're being buried under the weight of responsibility and the demands of taking care of children, and feeling like your creativity is something that you need to postpone until later years, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. But what is true is that it's not going to look the same as it did before, and that that's okay, and in some ways, even more amazing. So let's get into it. What happens to a creative person, which I would argue we all are, but some practice their creativity more than others, I would say. What happens when you become a mom? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is fragmentation. Fragmentation of your time, fragmentation of your mind, fragmentation of really all parts of you in motherhood. You are fragmented. You are split into pieces, starting with birth. It's like quite a physical thing. You are kind of split open in some ways to bring a new being into the world. And then from there, things become fragmented emotionally, mentally, physically, sometimes even spiritually, and definitely creatively. Your time fragments. When you are with a new baby and babies within the first couple years, you start noticing time in a very different way. The days stretch. You're working within these little wake windows of, in the beginning, it's like 30 to 45 minutes. Babies fall asleep after being awake that long. Then it stretches to like an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, then a couple hours. Then eventually they're down to one nap. But you start thinking in times of like these little chunks of time. What can I do during their nap? What can I do, with this 4 hour window I have with them? So that's the first thing that starts getting fragmented. Then your mind starts to compartmentalize not just your own needs, but the needs of your child and then the needs of your children in relation to each other. So you're starting to be expanded, but in the expansion, there's cracks and there's little broken bits. And those can feel really hard, especially in the beginning. Over time, though, you're going to see how transformative this experience is, how expansive your heart, your mind, your energy is going to start to become. And it also whittles away all the unnecessary parts of life. And so when you get a chunk of time, you start to really value that time. It becomes precious rather than kind of unending, like prior to becoming a mom, where time sort of had a different feel to it. And you had more ability to move through that time in your own way versus with motherhood, there's all these other elements at play. And so you start to become really good at using your time with practice, with experience. And one thing I want to encourage you here is something that I've noticed too. It's really can become quite paralyzing sometimes knowing what to do with that time, especially if you are in the midst of working on a creative project or building a business, doing something outside the scope of caretaking for your children and kind of being a stay-at-home mom, which trust me is a full-time job and more in itself. So if you're in the throes of that, just know you're exactly where you need to be. There's no need to throw anything else on top of that. But for those who feel that kind of pull in their hearts to add something in, you want to start a crochet business, you want to start a floral arranging just to sort of exercise some of your creativity. You want to start potentially taking on a little bit of work here and there to use your mind to contribute financially, whatever it might be. I encourage you to do so if you feel that pull in your heart. But there's a couple caveats to this for those who are kind of choosing to stay at home with their children, or maybe the choice, is kind of demanded based on financial obligations and constraints. So, whatever your situation is, just know you are doing the right thing for your family. Trust in yourself, and you can make the most of wherever you are today. I believe one of the most important things we can do for our children is to thrive and feel alive ourselves. It is not this whole idea of mom guilt for taking the time to nourish your soul. But in the beginning, it will look like really small little bits of fragmented time to do that in. And so it's not going to be these necessarily long, extensive morning or evening routines. It might not be the decision to sit down and work uninterrupted for 4 hours at a time on your website or your blog or some creative project. You're not going to necessarily have the space and time to write that book that's been on your heart all in, one go, one iteration of it. But there is space for you to nourish yourself and to feel alive by exploring and playing with your inner creativity and allowing that to flow through you. And the first piece of advice I would have for you is to stop scrolling. My kind of tagline I've been playing with on my website and my Substack recently is stop scrolling, start creating. So, what can you do to create versus consume? I've talked about this for a long time, um, both with children and encouraging them to create versus consume. And it's so important for mothers to do the same. What do we do when we get a chunk of time? Are we consuming? And it's okay to sometimes consume. Sometimes I do want to sit down and read a book or watch my favorite show. That's okay in moderation. But where can you create? Where can you give life to the visions and ideas and callings in your heart? Where can you pour that out onto paper or canvas? Where can you reach out to a friend, not in uh, not in liking their photo or commenting on something that they're posting, but sitting down to write them a postcard or a letter from your heart? Where can you nourish those relationships and the relationship with yourself and reach out to others and give of the gifts that you have? So that's my first piece of advice. Create over consuming. And this creation in this phase of life might look, again, really fragmented. You might not finish that letter before your baby needs you. That's okay. You're going to get with practice really good at that kind of mental task switching that is needed in early motherhood. Take a deep breath, give yourself a moment to sort of recalibrate, set it aside, knowing it's not going anywhere, knowing it will be there waiting for you in the next breath that you get in between taking care of yourself and your children. So be okay with that. Be okay with the chunks of time that are broken. Be okay with the interruptions. Take that deep breath, take that moment you need to recalibrate your nervous system and switch into mom mode. And also know that there's a way to create with your children too. And this will happen as they maybe get a little older. But I love sitting down at the table with my children and setting out arts and crafts and letting them do their thing and simultaneously doing my thing, bringing out my sketchbook. And it's amazing what kids pick up from you. So instead of setting up a whole craft experience for them and then stepping back and letting them do it and not doing something for yourself too, join in, whether it's joining them in the fun when they're very little, when they'll probably need guidance, or now that my daughter is, 5.5 and 4, and I have a baby who's sort of in that sweet spot that she could just kind of sit in my lap, I can join in the fun too. I'll sit down and enter a journal entry into my book or sit down with a pen and paper and start sketching the tree outside my window. I join in the fun and they love it. They love to see what I'm doing. They love to gain inspiration and ideas from my own sketchwork and a very rudimentary drawings. So, first, find those pockets of time, create versus consume. Second, try to pull yourself into the creativity you're already creating for your children. My third piece of advice or kind of topic I want to share in today's episode is this idea of shedding what needs to be shed and evolving in motherhood. Throughout my 5.5 years of being a mom, I've shed and evolved my identities in many ways. And it's really easy to look back and kind of just like grieve and miss the old version of you, especially the pre-mom version. And there's definitely that's something we all go through, right? We change when we become mothers. There's actually a very physical change that happens in your chemical makeup in your brain and through breastfeeding, if that's your choice, but pregnancy and the exchange of platelets between you and your babies, there's so much that actually like biologically happens and changes you. But there is also a spiritual and a visceral transformation that happens when you become a mom. And it's okay to grieve the old you, but know that you are even more than the old you than you were before. And that's a really beautiful thing. So embrace your new identity and know that that's going to shed and shed and evolve as you get continually thrown into the depths of motherhood, whether it's adding new children or going back to work or raising a teenager or launching that child out into the world. You will continue to shed and evolve. And I have experienced that as I've become a mother. I went from from a career standpoint, working full time for a corporation and becoming a remote worker to getting a new job and thinking it was more flexible, then realizing it wasn't more flexible and quitting the whole thing and starting my business and then working even less in my business as I had future babies and then shifting the way that business looked from client model to content model and shifting that again. And in some ways, I'm like, oh, why can't I be consistent? Why can't I stick to something? And I realize it's because I'm shedding and evolving what's not working now that used to work before, and what's demanded of my time more now that I have these new children at the ages that they've never been before and never will be again. And so embracing that process, shedding and evolving, and allowing the creativity to move through you in new and different ways as you lose time, gain time, go through these different seasons of pregnancy and postpartum and early childhood and all of these things. So, that is my next, sort of like eh, way of feeling that flexibility and adaptability in motherhood and embracing it rather than fighting against it or grieving too much for the old versions. Welcome the new versions. We're welcoming new versions of our children, aren't we? Each and every day they change. So are you. Your motherhood experience is your child's childhood. Co create that experience with them. And again, the best thing you can do is be a fulfilled, vibrant, whole individual for your children. And it doesn't mean you're always happy. And in fact, it's really good for you to show your children the breadth of feelings and emotions and imperfections to allow them that same grace as they grow up and as they become, adults or potentially parents themselves. Show them all there is to be in life and embrace it all with imperfection and grace and continue to nurture your soul by feeding your creativity in any small way you can. Now, I want to talk to the mom who might be of my own heart, who has this calling on their heart to create something big, who feels they have a purpose in life to share their gifts, to share a message. Motherhood is my first calling. I know that from the bottom of my heart, but there's also this calling out there that I'm still working my way towards. I keep telling I told my sister this just yesterday. I feel like my 40s is when I'm really going to hit my stride. I'm 5 years away from turning 40. So I'm still working towards that big thing. I don't know, that becoming the message that I have to share. But I want to talk about something to the moms who want to build that business in the years of raising their children, in the years of still being home with them. What does that look like? And there's this disconnect between business advice and like sort of the mommy world of like homeschooling and raising your children and living slow. There's a disconnect between growing this business and working at it and being consistent every day and scaling and monetizing and being profitable and just all the business advice that I consume from, that standpoint of growing a brand, growing a business, sharing a message, reaching clients, converting leads to the mommy side of living slow, being there with your children day to day and pouring into them, pouring into yourself, um, making a home and baking the bread and not consuming and all of this. There's this disconnect where there is a meeting of those two minds. There is a way to bridge those two callings. But the bridge is a long bridge. It's a slow bridge, and it's one of sustainability. It's one of moving slowly, intentionally, and being okay with the fragmentation of building a business in the early years of raising children. It's going to look different than the influencer in your ear who is running that content machine of daily output. It's going to look different. But it's also going to look different from the mom who doesn't feel that calling to build a business, who can just sort of be present within the context of motherhood itself without ever branching into the business world. And so I haven't worked out all the details yet because I'm still living through it. But I think there is a beautiful middle ground where you can pursue this vision you have, but it's going to be one step forward, two steps back. It's going to be putting content out there and then going quiet for a little while because you're needed in different places. And I do think that this is a path forward. It is a slow moving train in the right direction. And maybe some stops are going to stop a little bit longer, right? But you're going to keep moving forward. I have taken breaks in my business. I have changed what my business looks like. I have changed my offerings. I have transformed so much of my business, but I do keep moving forward through three babies, through the decision to homeschool, at least for the time I'm homeschooling. I will keep moving forward. So that is my kind of final piece of advice here. No matter what season of motherhood you're in, different parts of you are going to be called in different ways. Different parts of your energy are going to be consumed in different ways. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward at your pace, not at the pace that the internet demands you, not at the pace of the person who's created a course has instructed you. And me, I've created that course. But keep moving forward at the pace that is required of you of your heart, as required from the vision that you have in your head. And know that monetization isn't everything. There is a message I'm sure that, is on your heart that needs to be shared. I believe if you are moving in the right direction with the right heart, with the right message, monetization will come. And in the early years, sometimes that's just going to look different. Now, you might have a business that's booming, and that's a whole other path you can take in motherhood. But I'm speaking to the moms who are in the throes, who have 12 minutes of free time a day to take a shower. There is still space for you to come alive. There is still space for you to feed your soul. It's just going to look different. And I also fully believe that each child awakens something within us and it expands our possibilities beyond what we thought was possible. Children are not a hindrance to a creativity. They are a catalyst for new creativity to come through us. So if you are in that season, I feel you. I empathize with you. Know that you are being strengthened through the challenges, that you are expanding through the fragmented life that you're living right now. Your container is just going to continue to grow. and you have something valuable to share. So keep moving forward in that direction and let me know what it is you're building. If you are in the process of building something or you just have ideas in your heart, I would love to hear about them. Share them with me, send me an email, comment on my Substack post. I would love to hear from you. And as always, keep building what you're building from a place of love. I'll see you next time.